Excellent, excellent. Welcome back, as I said. A number of things have been happening locally. You were successfully re-elected. How have you been settling into your second term as leader of the PNCR, People's National Congress?
Well, I can say I had some rest because I have been at it all the time.
So, where are we going with this? And these are people who were so-called champions, fighting corruption and made so many promises before they got into office.
Well, I think the legacy of this government, RRUPT, the legacy when it's all over and we have elections and the PVPC wins, is that what will be their legacy, other than arches and stuff like that they've left behind, will be a legacy of corruption that I think has not been seen in this country ever. And certainly even with the Burnham regime and so on, where there were a lot of questionable things that happened.
And here comes Mr. Mohammed, performing miracles for these people, builds home for them, and continues to check on them. Mr. Mohammed has made changes in people's lives, so many people across Guyana. He's built homes for people, he's paid tuitions for people, he has paid to help people to do surgeries, he has helped people to go through college, he has helped people to start businesses.
Let's start with these very strong allegations that were brought against a very senior policeman recently, Mr. Brutus. They said he was trying to make a huge deposit into the police credit union, $15+ million, and the $1.5 million as interest. You're hearing a senior policeman owns multiple buildings, apartment buildings, and all of that. Is this a government that's taking corruption seriously? What are your thoughts here?
If you go back to what I was saying from the time I became opposition leader, if you do not have a proper police commissioner who is qualified and can do the work and whose integrity is not in question, then we're going to have problems.
Sometimes things that corruption is just to do with money. That someone's getting a kickback somewhere and things like that. In fact, corruption has to do with abuse of power, and the abuse of power in terms of whether it is giving people special benefits. It includes executive lawlessness.
But imagine ExxonMobil, who would have been allegedly robbing Guyana tax dollars, $271 million in taxes. That is back in 2020, 2019. And nothing has been done. They've not been sanctioned. There right now cases going on, rumors all over the here that Exxon is still defrauding Guyana. Have our country signed to a slave deal, a slave lopsided fiscal deal.
Unfortunately for them, low ranks in the Ghana police force, they were putting the information out there, so they became exposed. Now the reality is, this covenant of this country is done in a corrupt way. The allocation of contracts is by, in large measure, corruption. You have corrupted the head, the body will go.
The softer areas of nepotism, of giving people, friends and family and party activist jobs all over the place, whether they're qualified or not. So there's nothing wrong with people getting jobs. The issue is, but it must be based on meritocracy. And so nepotism, bribery, solicitation, in other words, asking for a bribe.
Exxon still has Guyana in the same slave wage, and they've not been sanctioned. The gold corporations that are paying Guyana small, tiny royalties. The Chinese businessmen and the Chinese tycoons that are just allowed to come into this country and set up for minimum duties and minimum taxes. I've heard nothing about sanctions for these people.
Welcome back to the flight. Hit that subscription button, buddy, and stay updated with everything that's trending in Guyana and the diaspora. Thanks.
The engagements were very well. A lot of it was focused on engaging the Indian community in the United States, Guyanese of course. And we did have a good bit of engagements, and we promised to do some work moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. Welcome back, as I said. A number of things have been happening locally. You were successfully re-elected. How have you been settling into your second term as leader of the PNCR, People's National Congress?
Well, I can say I had some rest because I have been at it all the time. Now we have a new executive. We meet on Wednesday, and I'm going to, at that meeting, engage them on a number of issues which we will discuss and arrive at some positions on. We have to name a general secretary, though it's exclusively within the realm of the leader. I've been engaging people, and I think by Wednesday CEC, I would have identified the next general secretary of the party.
Excellent. Is the public going to be happy?
If the public is going to what?
Is the public going to be happy?
Well, I would think they should be happy. The person that is under consideration is a competent person. But I still have a few more engagements before I actually say that this is the person, this is how we move forward.
Excellent. As you start this second term, you've said you've already had some engagement in the diaspora. What are you thinking of locally? And I want to pick your brain on a couple of very serious issues developing.
I want to start a significant focus on the youth. The Congress had decided that we should have our youth conference by October. And we will work assiduously to ensure that we get that youth conference off. We have been working with the youth across the country, engaging them. We're now going to just bring them together, provide them with the GYSM constitution, which some of them have, and to begin to work in a structural way with the youth of the party and the youth of the country, because the youth is critical to the next election.
Excellent. And let's talk about some of what's happening currently. Some of it very, very corrupt, seemingly untenable as it were. Let's start with these very strong allegations that were brought against a very senior policeman recently, Mr. Brutus. They said he was trying to make a huge deposit into the police credit union, $15+ million, and the 1.5 million as interest. You're hearing a senior policeman owns multiple buildings, apartment buildings, and all of that. Is this a government that's taking corruption seriously? What are your thoughts here?
If you go back to what I was saying from the time I became opposition leader, if you do not have a proper police commissioner who is qualified and can do the work, and whose integrity is not in question, then we're going to have problems. Now, before that, you had Vice President Jack Dale being accused of fraud, of bribery and corruption, without the police investigating. The very fact that the police refused to investigate it underscores the reality that the police would be guided by their activities, and so the police now know that they have to protect the political directorate so they can do it and escape. Unfortunately for them, low ranks in the Ghana police force, they were putting the information out there, so they became exposed. Now the reality is, this governing of this country is done in a corrupt way. The allocation of contracts is by, in large measure, corruption. You have corrupted the head, the body will go. And so I've been saying for the longest while that I will never agree to the appointment of the present acting police commissioner, because he doesn't suit the job. And it has nothing to do with anything personal. The very PPP had outlined the qualifications for a commissioner. The politicization of the police force has placed it where it is. If you politicize the police force now knows that they don't have to be accountable to the commissioner. You hear some of them talking about going directly to the president, some going to the vice president. So almost immediately you remove the line of command and create multiple points of power that policemen can access, and in the process you undermine the structure of the police. With an undermined structure, senior policemen believe they can become involved in illegalities and get away with it because they have to protect persons. Let us not forget they would have had to get an instruction to deal with the allegations of rape against
Mr. Darmlal.
Minister Dharamlal at the time. And that would have meant that policemen know, they are aware that there is political intervention and that they did a favor to the government. So they now see themselves as the government having favors for them. And that kind of create the conditions for the level of corruption you're seeing, not only at the police, but look what is happening in Goal and the GGMC. Look what has happened.
I'm coming there. I'm coming to GGMC.
So
Vikram.
once you politicize the structures that should be independent, once you remove the line of command, you are creating conditions propitious to the high levels of corruption we've seen here.
What do you think of what the Minister of Home Affairs, Robson Ben, said about investigation into the very issues concerning Mr. Brutus, that SOCU was going to be doing the investigation?
Well, in a statement we made it very clear. You can't charge Caesar to be tried by Caesar. The police has already established that they lack credibility, more so at the top. Now, you, rather than send Brutus home, you claim that he is asked to be sent on leave. That in itself tells you that he continues to be who he is on leave, and therefore there is scope for him to interfere with junior ranks. We have said in a press statement, this demands a reputable international institution such as the FBI or the authorities in Canada or some country in which their law enforcement architecture is intact. You cannot allow the police to investigate the police. It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. You need a reputable investigator, and then there's the accounts part of it, in which you might need a forensic accountant to go through, etc. So it has transcended the police force. And the police force, by its very action, would have made themselves not a candidate. It is only the blind will not see that the police cannot investigate the police. It has to be done by a reputable institution. Let us not forget, we wrote the Commissioner of Police when they were when there was electoral fraud in the local government election. He refused to act. Clearly, he acted to protect the PPP and their operatives. And now it is their turn to protect them. And if we're going to get anywhere with an investigation, it has to be a reputable international body undertaking the investigation. Excellent.
The U.S. Treasury issued a number of sanctions recently to what they call gold smuggling, among other things. Matusan Thomas, one of the ministers, permanent secretary, said received gifts and all of that for lucrative contracts. The Mohammeds were caught up in that, are caught up in that. Vikram Bharat is the head of that ministry that has oversight for the gold board and gold exports and so on. Allegations are already that he was recently detained by U.S. federal agents, escorted off a flight to New York. Questioned, he is adamant that while he did talk to these federal agents, it was concerning the development of Guyana. He's actually suing veteran journalist Enrico Wolford on that front. What are your thoughts about these developments?
Well, I think he's grandstanding. I think he knows full well that he was pulled in, and that Enrico is a reputable journalist who, over the years, journalism, he does his research, he does his work, and when he would have put that out there, it would have been after he would have accumulated all the facts and put it out there. Now, the government must of necessity try to say something, but even in what they're saying, there are loopholes. I think I saw one, Robin Singh wrote a letter that didn't make much sense, because here is a minister, goes to the United States. There seems to be a confusion as to, they said he was there on his personal matters. Of course, he was using a diplomatic passport. I do not believe that the United States government just acted on one day. If you follow how the U.S. Agencies work, they tend to over a prolonged period. And we were hearing whispers here that they were on to what was happening in terms of the gold industry. And continuously the Mohammeds were saying they were innocent, etc.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that they were doing their work. They have information at their disposal. It is now the task of the government to say to the United States government, look, you are operating now at the level of allegation. Provide us with the evidence. If there's no evidence forthcoming, then I can see them saying, oh, well then we're not going to sanction anybody. But if they ask for the evidence and they get the evidence, then they will be obligated to operate in a particular way. Look, some people will comment on the interference in internal affairs. I do believe that countries should have their sovereign rights. But if you sign on to a convention on corruption, then you have obligations in this world. And if there's the contention that there is corruption in high places and governments are acting, let us not forget these are governments we are asking for loans and assistance from. We were just asking for money for the Gasto Shore project, which I understand was not approved. But even as we talk about sovereignty, we also have got to talk about our international obligation. And it is very critical at this stage that we support any fight against corruption. Corruption has been in this world one of the things countries end up with the resource curse. And we believe that everything should be done to reduce and ultimately eradicate corruption. Because if you have weak institutions like we have, and money going around like it is going around, there is supposed to be an investment committee that is managing an investment that is innocuous. It is not allowed to do what it has to do. So you have an open playing field for corruption. And I believe both at the national and international level, corruption has got to be handled. Corruption is one of the causes of poverty in societies, because when the elite is corrupt, they carry away millions, billions of dollars in this case, and the people don't benefit. If you look at this government virtually doubling the infrastructure budget, I made a point in my Congress presentation that it is unacceptable for you to be doubling the budget. We believe there is need for infrastructure work, but you double the budget, you lack the capacity to implement a lot of these projects.
One love, Delta9 family. Welcome back to the flight. Now today we have the leader of the opposition, fresh back off of some nice rest somewhere in the US, engaging with persons. No engagement with law enforcement, might I add. And he's pointing out and having a conversation on some of the very important things that he'll be dealing with in his second term. He's making sure to point out that, look, the corruption in the country is rampant. Rampant. They're having a conversation about the big deposit. You know, the deposit that sent people upon leave and left the world in disbelief. I'm telling you, they're having a conversation about the deposit there, then everything that's going on with the sanctions, and even talking about the whole GGMC incidents and everything going on with the fact that the minister as well was pulled in for questioning allegedly just recently when he went to the US. Look, if you haven't already, buddy, hit the thumbs up button. Hit the thumbs up button and keep content like this boosted in the algorithm so that it could never be swept under the rug. Make sure that these kinds of information gets to everyone in Guyana and in the diaspora. Thanks. Now in full Delta9 Media style, we must have someone from the opposite pole of the political body in the country say something about corruption in the government. So we're going to have none other than Miss Gail Teixeira, and she's going to be speaking about corruption in the government. We're going to get right into the content with the Honorable Miss Gail Teixeira as she decodes some of the levels and tactics of corruption in the country. And then we're going to hear from another concerned citizen as he addresses some of the insights from his perspectives as it relates to Mohammed's and the sanctions. Right now, let's get into the content. If you haven't already, do remember to hit that thumbs up button and keep these types of content trending in the algorithm. Hit that thumbs up button and stay updated with everything that's trending in Guyana and in the diaspora.
So, where are we going with this? And these are people who were so-called champions, fighting corruption and made so many promises before they got into office.
Well, I think the legacy of this government, RRUPT, the legacy when it's all over and we have elections and the PVPC wins, is that what will be their legacy, other than arches and stuff like that they've left behind, will be a legacy of corruption that I think has not been seen in this country ever. And certainly even with the Burnham regime and so on, where there were a lot of questionable things that happened to do with expenditure, I think the AFC government surpasses anything that may have happened in that era. And so the levels of corruption are probably compounded by incompetence, ineptitude, discrimination, a whole range of other issues that they're guilty of. But the legacy of this government will be one of the greatest, the largest corruption that we've ever seen. And I thought for the viewers too, we should probably look at what is corruption, because people sometimes think that corruption is just to do with money. That someone's getting a kickback somewhere and things like that. In fact, corruption has to do with abuse of power, and the abuse of power in terms of whether it is giving people special benefits. It includes executive lawlessness. Is the executive obeying the laws of the country? And the executive, for example, carrying out the financial rules and the Procurement Act of this country? Is it abiding by the Constitution, to do with the usage of the constitutional consolidated fund and contingencies and stuff like that? Do we have executive lawlessness? The other areas that may be called the softer areas of nepotism, of giving people, friends and family and party activist jobs all over the place, whether they're qualified or not. So there's nothing wrong with people getting jobs. The issue is, but it must be based on meritocracy. And so nepotism, bribery, solicitation, in other words, asking for a bribe. And this permeates our society. And the breach of procurement laws in this country, and deliberately being used to facilitate an identified beneficiary contractor. And so in some cases, the avoidance of procurement completely. In other cases, having tenders out and then cancelling them, put them back again, cancel again, so as to make sure the final person who wins is the one that they want. Corruption also includes things like the way in which you distribute goods and services in terms of like land, forestry, mining, so that we're hearing now that despite our views, and I think the general global view is that a government that has been defeated at a no-confidence motion is only given caretaker responsibilities. We're hearing that there's distribution of land and forests. There's quite a rush in relation to that, and that is considered corruption, both in terms of the action of a government that is not and no longer has a mandate of the people, but also a government that is corruptly distributing what are the assets of Guyana without going through the required processes. So that these, I think, are some of the gamut of what is corruption in our society. And of course, I'm sure the colleagues of mine who spoke before were able to highlight some special cases.
Yes, certainly, certainly.
And there's some that are very glaring, and there are those that are in the making still.
Yes, but the thing is, when one is to look at what the government has been doing over the past 3.5 years or so, matter of fact, their most significant achievement in terms of projects happens to be the Durban Park.
That's one of their legacy.
But the level of corruption there is very, very high. So that's their legacy. And like you rightly said, the legacy of this government is really corruption, nepotism.
It will go down in history as the legacy of the AFNOA.
But you've been chronicling these things all along. I understand you almost have close to a 500-page book in terms of the number.
I've been
of
trying
instances.
to keep track, but I must say they're ahead of me because I keep trying to keep track of what they're doing, and then something new comes up. And some of the issues are like a saga. Let's take the same one, Durban Park. Began 2015 after the elections. 2016 we start learning about where's this money coming from. They said in the August 2015 budget, this would not cost 1 cent to the taxpayer. Then suddenly you have works going on, and how are these works being procured? Then you're hearing the donations. Then you're hearing about this. Subsequently, the end of 2016, you start hearing about this home stretch company, which happens to have a minister on it and a former army officer who is extraordinarily close to the government. And then you have suddenly the government come to the president, then decides that Minister Patterson must take over the works. And he uses 120 million from his budget this is all to conclude works. And then they go for a supplementary of $400 million. And then they go to a budgetary thing, which is 2017, where they want now $500 million. So when you start adding up, you come to about $1.4 billion
for that
wow. Set of stuff there that you call it Durban Development Park, made of rotten wood and totally unfriendly and user unfriendly for creative and artistic things, including MASH. It just doesn't work. The configuration's wrong. So that's up to a certain point. We know 1.4 billion, Eddie. But the questions, we brought a motion on the Durban Park. And we said, okay, all these things we exposed, and then we said, how is this thing going to be managed? Who's going to pay for the electricity, the security, the cleaning? And they then said it would be done jointly with, Ministry of Public Works and Ministry of Communities. Then, of course, in the 2018 budget, we start saying it's more in Ministry of Communities. They're not revealing the exact amounts. So that Durban Park, I think, probably is in the $2 billion range, really, because they did other works last independence to it. They remember the chain link fence went up, which wasn't there before. They've done some attempts to nice up the place and things like that. Just that, and when you look at the National Stadium that cost us $16 million Exim Bank loan from the India Exim Bank. We put in probably about $2 million for the World Cup. So 18 million times approximately 200 odd then, you're talking about 3-point-something billion, approximately. So let's say 3.5 billion. Look at the quality of the differences between the stadium and
a picture circulating comparing the two.
It is unbelievable, and I remember when we were doing the designs of the National Stadium and negotiating with the Indian contractors and so on. Mr. Corbyn supported it. He had all the designs, the drawings, and actually came out with a statement in support of Guyana going into the bid, etc. The stadium, of course, when we were in government, we put some more things in. We put in the parking lot, we put in some things and things like that. It is still a beautiful place. The fact that I think they're afraid of jumbies. They have a real, we're not, but they are. And so they didn't want to hold the inauguration and on all these things. They had the inauguration there and then decided it wasn't suitable for the anniversary of independence. So you spend approximately $2 billion over a 3.5, almost 4-year period. And the place is of a very poor standard. But outside of that, the accountability, the Auditor General in this Auditor General's report of 2018, this is his report, of December 2017, points out that he still doesn't have the documents to do with the expenditure
Durban Park.
for Durban Park. He still hasn't got the figures. Then of course, you know, you have other ones, the city council ones, where there's a commission of inquiry that exposed a lot of the corruption in the city council. And of course, Kitty Market, $240 million spent, took 3 years. It is a total disaster. And when we went in and took photographs, rotten wood was painted over. Beams that support the structure on the upper level are rotten and broken. And all of this, of course, is taxpayers. So taxpayers get really robbed. It's several ways around. One, and the whole issue of corruption is that it denies the citizens of the country goods and services that they've been promised or entitled to. So, let me go to the one of any of them. Citizens expect adequate health care, satisfactory health care, that the majority of the essential goods, drugs and supplies would be available when they go to the public health sector. The budget of the Ministry of Health, Public Health under this government has increased even from our time. It's about 12% of the budget, but it is high. What is the track record of this government? They've spent, in fact, billions of dollars without going to tender, both using the regional allocations and the Georgetown Hospital allocation and the Ministry of Public Health allocation. You're talking maybe in total, for 1 year alone, maybe $3 to $4 billion of a $7 billion budget that for drugs and medical supplies that didn't go to tender. So about 80% of your drugs. So the ordinary citizen goes, he's a diabetic, he has pressure problems, children have to be vaccinated, women are looking for some of their gynecological issues, and they are there. So you have the taxpayers being ripped off twice. One, in terms of the money that they earn and they pay in taxes to this government, that they are paying higher in many cases for the goods that are being purchased because the boys have to collect on the side. So if I want to, so for example, let's take a particular thing like a basic antibiotic that is needed in the health sector. I can, if I go to tender, I can probably get it at a price of, let's just play with numbers, $1 a tablet, a $1 tablet. But the guys have their friend out there who doesn't even have a license to bring in the drugs, doesn't even an American license or a local license, is offering them $3-4 for the same tablet. They want a friend to get it because, of course, there's a lot of kickback along the way. So what happens then? This is done, it avoids the procurement area. So the citizen goes to the health center in any place and has a bad respiratory problem and requires an antibiotic. And they don't have it, or they don't have enough of it, or they have the wrong one, or the stuff hasn't been delivered as yet. So gynaes are ripped off twice. The country is ripped off. The people are ripped off twice. They're paying, in many cases, they're getting less drugs at a higher cost. So that's part of the reason why there's the shortage in the public health sector.
The money is there, it's just that
The money
what
is
is being
being
used to more.
and it's being purchased higher priced drugs when you can get them cheaper. And so, but also then they're being gypped that the services and the goods are not there. So you go to the Georgetown Hospital, 9 out of 10 people are told, go and buy it outside. You go to Bartica Hospital, you have to go outside. If you go to Linden Hospital, same thing. And so people are really, this is the whole idea of corruption. The corruption denies people a good standard of life. It denies them, and this is what is the whole conventions on corruption, whilst they are looking to find, monitor and regulate and so on. Really it is based on a premise that corruption, for every dollar that is stolen from the people by corruption, it denies the people basic things that they require to live and to have a good life, and a good life according to what they promised.
No secret, that 60% of our Guyanese people are living at and below the poverty line. The poverty line is 1,000 Guyana dollars per day, $5. Below the poverty line is less than 1,000 Guyana dollars per day. In this country, that is pushing an inflation that is 60, 80, 100, 120%, 200%. Every other week you go to the shop, the price is changing because there's no price control in this country. The cost of a land in this country is more than $600,000, and these are in a lot of rural areas. These aren't even lands that are in the central of the country, and these lands are more than 600,000 Guyana dollars. People that are living at the poverty line, 1,000 Guyana dollars per day. Do you think these people would have ever been able to afford a land, or ever been able to afford their own home? Now, go through and build houses for these people. Ask yourself, who does these things? These are nothing short of miracles. Understand, these people living so poor, and the salaries are so poor, and the taxes are so high, and labor cost is so cheap in this country that most people can't afford to own a home. And here comes Mr. Muhammad, performing miracles for these people, builds home for them, and continues to check on them. Mr. Muhammad has made changes in people's lives, so many people across Guyana. He's built homes for people. He's paid tuitions for people. He has paid to help people to do surgeries. He has helped people to go through college. He has helped people to start businesses. People that were in accidents, people that did surgeries, that couldn't fend for themselves, that could not come out to the workforce and work. Mr. Muhammad went into their homes and provided a way. And I look at this country, give Mr. Muhammad stone for bread for all his good work, all his philanthropy, all his humanitarian work, all the love and respect he shows for Guyanese people in all walks of life. This man was now given stone for bread. When this man was sanctioned, I was like, what? Can you imagine ExxonMobil and Hess and Chevron? Exxon is the parent company for all these other oil companies. So all the money goes to Exxon. But imagine ExxonMobil, who would have been allegedly robbing Guyana tax dollars, 271 million US dollars in taxes. That is back in 2020, 2019. And nothing has been done. They've not been sanctioned. They're right now cases going on, rumors all over the here that Exxon is still defrauding Guyana. Have our country signed to a slave deal, a slave lopsided fiscal deal that even our international neighbors, our brothers and sisters, big international first world countries implored Guyana to get that oil deal renegotiated and re-signed. And even until today, Exxon still has Guyana in the same slave wage. And they've not been sanctioned. The gold corporations that are paying Guyana small, tiny royalties. The Chinese businessmen and the Chinese tycoons that are just allowed to come into this country and set up for minimum duties and minimum taxes. I've heard nothing about sanctions for these people. But our brother, Mr. Azadeen Mohammed, they give him stone for bread. This reminds me of when they had Jesus hung upon the cross. When they had Jesus there with Barabbas. Just imagine Jesus Christ, the Christ himself, walk this earth, performing miracles, saving lives, bringing the dead back to life, allowing the blind to see, blessing the poor, multiplying the fish, feeding the people. And when they asked, who do the people want? The people said they wanted Jesus Barabbas. A rapist, a murderer, a thief, a manipulator, a con man. They shouted out they wanted Barabbas. And they allowed Jesus to be unalived. And this is the exact situation that is going on today. If Mr. Muhammad, that has been doing so much work for the Guyanese people, can be sanctioned because he owes, allegedly, the Americans some 50 million US dollars in taxes. He owes them, not the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which is an independent. He has been defrauding the American government over $50 million in taxes. Our goal that is supposed to be for the Guyanese people, that our Guyanese native brother, Mr. Muhammad, is mining and has been in my opinion, paying his dues and overpaying his dues to Guyana. Single-handedly changing the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of Guyanese family and of Guyanese all over this country. Mr. Mohammed, when have you ever seen ExxonMobil give back anything to Guyana? Anything you need from Exxon, you gotta go work for it. You can't get anything for free from ExxonMobil. When they had their drive in different communities the other day, they work, driver job, driver whatever it was. Cheap bags, cheap bottles, that is what they give to Guyanese people. I don't understand what is going on, Guyanese people. We need to do a string of videos and stand up for our brother Mr. Azadeen Mohammed, because this man should be protected and represented at all costs. This is a man with a balance and a mental compass, a good mental compass. This is not a criminal. Criminals don't do the things that Mr. Mohammed does. This man goes into really underdeveloped communities, really underdeveloped communities. I saw this man barefoot in interior locations, bringing aid to the people in those locations. Seen him all over the length and breadth of Guyana. This man seems to be non-judgmental, unbiased, loving, caring, and a good Guyanese. And this is nothing but another way for the imperialists, the authoritarians, the despots, the pharaohs to practice their fascism by putting Guyanese out of bread again, by sanctioning our brother Azadeen Mohammed. This is to further squeeze the Guyanese people and impoverish us, because so many Guyanese had hopes in life just because of what Mr. Mohammed was able to do. Each and every Guyanese should stand up for Mr. Mohammed. We're not saying enough about what's going on with this man. Whatever it is, we should be given all the information, all the facts we want to know, because so many people have been put out of opportunity because they have sanctioned Mr. Mohammed, who is the Guyanese poor people representative. He is a lot of Guyanese poor people one last hope, because the government does nothing for Guyanese people out of their pocket. I have never heard of no minister building no house for anybody. I haven't heard of any minister donating and building shops and stocking shops for people, opening, building and scaling businesses for people out of their own pockets, with their $1+ million salaries that they getting and earning from our tax dollars, Guyanese. And these, our politicians, our government just sat back and like allow this to happen. We need to have more people speak up on behalf of Mr. Mohammed. Now, I did a video the other day asking if people would like for Mr. Mohammed to run for president, and so many of you in the comments said Mohammed for president, Mohammed for president, Mohammed for president. Throw your weight behind Mr. Mohammed and do some videos and let the world know how you feel about this man, because I can see it as nothing more than a scheme by the imperialists to squeeze Guyanese people out of their possibilities and out of their opportunities by sanctioning Mr. Mohammed. I don't know how you guys feel about it. It took me a long time to get around to doing this video, because, you know, I just wanted to make sure that the facts were there. But all we heard is that the Mohammeds got sanctioned. And people that we've been hearing for years have been accused of fraud, have been accused of embezzlement, misappropriation, misconduct in office, all these things. Nothing has been done to these people. The international cooperation that are defrauding us millions of dollars in tax dollars, and these things were all reported in the news. These people aren't being sanctioned. But the one person that helping Guyanese people, that showing Guyanese people a better way, that giving Guyanese people faith that tomorrow could be my day, that Mr. Mohammed knocks on at my door and changes my life, this is the man got sanctioned. We need to stand up for Mr. Azadeen Mohammed, more Guyanese brothers and sisters. This is an Eternity Enterprise presentation. Y'all stay safe. But our brother, Mr. Azadeen Mohammed, they gave him stone for bread. This reminds me of when they had Jesus hung up on the cross, when they had Jesus there with Barabbas. Just imagine Jesus Christ, the Christ himself, walk this earth, performing miracles, saving lives, bringing the dead back to life, allowing the blind to see, blessing the poor, multiplying the fish, feeding the people. And when they asked, who do the people want? The people said they wanted Jesus Barabbas. A rapist, a murderer, a thief, a manipulator, a con man. They shouted out they wanted Barabbas, and they allowed Jesus to be unalived. And this is the exact situation that is going on today. If Mr. Muhammad, that has been doing so much work for the Guyanese people, can be sanctioned because he owes, allegedly, the Americans some $50 million in taxes. He owes them, not the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which is an independent. He has been defrauding the American government over $50 million in taxes. Our goal that is supposed to be for the Guyanese people, that our Guyanese native brother, Mr. Muhammad, is mining and has been, in my opinion, paying his dues and overpaying his dues to Guyana, single-handedly changing the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of Guyanese family and of Guyana.
She's ready. Stay ready.
Mr.
The ultimate male supplement, men's total wellness formula, packed with essential nutrients for men's health.
She'll call you Mr. C.
With one of the judges that was recently appointed, and all of them are jumping on the mountaintop and singing. And that person is the ex-wife of Anil Nandalal. Nobody's talking about that. Just as they spoke about Robertson and who Robertson was dated.